Welcome to our last webinar of the year. Hard to believe we're halfway through December of 2023. Only a couple of weeks left to go until Christmas. Can't believe how quickly the year's gone. Thank you very much for making the time to join us. We understand it's a very, very busy time of the year. So I really appreciate you taking the time. For those of you that haven't joined us before, my name's Joe. This is Tam, and today we're going to be running through, I suppose, a bit of an exercise on looking back and moving forward and planning into 2024. So it's been a big year for everyone. So nothing too technically dense or complex in this one. It's probably more just taking the time to have a think about what's happened in the last 12 months and really looking at how we can get the most out of our break and into 2024. All right, bit of housekeeping. Feel free to add questions on the way through in the chat box to the right-hand side. It should be open on your screens when you jump in. If it's not, there'll be a little icon where you can open that up. You can also minimize it by just clicking the little arrow. If you want to make the screen a little bit bigger, feel free to do that. If you lose a connection, just jump back on. It should just reload the page and let you back in. And at the end of the session, like we always do, we'll send you an email out with the recording of the session and any of the things that we're going to run through today as well. Now, Amy has put up a workbook that we're going to refer to through this presentation. So if you could download that, we've seen a couple of people have done that already. If you can download that, again, that'll just be in the handout section of the right-hand side. So just hit download and grab a hold of that because we're going to be referring to that as we move through it.
If you don't have a chance to do that today, we're not doing anything in the workbook. It will just help you refer to that.
Excellent. So we're going to run through the power of reflection. So Amy's put a note in there to share your questions or thoughts in there anytime. Yeah, if you want to put thoughts or comments in the chat area, please feel free to do that as well. There'll be some polls that we're going to run and some, I suppose, interactive parts of this as well to try and keep it as I suppose, as interactive as possible, so we're not just talking at you for an hour. So please feel free to put your thoughts in there. There will be a little bit of time at the end for questions as well, if you want to hold them out till then. So whatever fits in, whatever you like to do. So agenda, we're going to be running through the power of reflection. A couple of points there around some reflection points, an SCC exercise, and the 3 circles. Supercharged planning. So how do we look at getting the most out of 2024, fitting in roles and rhythms around that, some accountability and the importance of that, how we can help with some of that sort of stuff. And then, as I said, we'll have some time at the end for some questions. All right, so we go through this every time, but I think it's pretty important, particularly on this sort of stuff where we are going to cover off on a few different things. But if you can just be open to new things and revisiting things that you may have heard in the past. Again, sometimes rehearing things and I suppose understanding or hearing it a different way or a different time can make a difference. So try to remain open to what we're going to discuss today, even if it hasn't potentially worked in the past for you, hasn't been applicable, it might be now. So listen to and note your thoughts and reactions. They're not positive or negative; they just are. Again, that's a bit in line with that first one. Just I suppose be aware of anything that is concerning to you or that you might have run into a brick wall in the past, because again, we're all about just trying to remove these brick walls and or get around them or get past them in order to move forward with your business. So be aware of that. Commit to trying at least one concept or action. So a lot of us go to these things and we might get one thing or we might get 20 things out of it and we don't do anything with any of those 20 things. If we could just do one thing and take one action, then we're a little bit better off than what we were yesterday. Ask your questions. You've got access to Tam and I for an hour. So please feel free to put them out there. You've made the effort to come along, so don't hold back. And don't think anything's a silly question. Chances are, if you're thinking it, someone else is, and you're better off being the one that asks that question. Happy to answer anything. And set yourself an accountability action. We're going to run through accountability as part of this presentation. We call it the magic step. So make sure that you take that step to set that accountability and to do those things. And that can be as simple as just telling someone you're going to do it and committing to talking to them about it in a month's time or a couple of weeks' time or whatever that looks like. So please do that. Make sure you get something out of the time you're spending and investing with us today. All right, so just a quick summary of where we are, what PTP is. Again, some of you will have seen this, we run through it every time, but I think it's important to, I suppose, just give an understanding of what Tam and I do and the team in the advisory section of the business. So Bookmates is obviously our bookkeeping business, and that ensures that the data is getting in there and we're getting access to financial information. We understand what that looks like. That's very important. And then our tax and compliance team minimise that tax and protect assets and deal with all the compliance stuff, which again, very, very important to stay on top of and takes up a lot of time and headspace. So our job is to try and minimise that for you and keep it as simple as possible, and obviously minimise the amount of tax you're paying. We're in that advisory space, and that's what we're talking about today, is increasing our profit and choice and getting more out of our businesses. So I suppose approach it with that mindset, and then obviously with PTP Wealth, we're talking about taking profits and investing and growing that wealth for the future.
All right, so we're going to do a poll first up. So because we're doing, reflection and planning today, how would you describe what you've done around reflection and planning process in the past? So if you could it should be up on your screen now. So are you just winging it? Are you flying by the seat of your pants with no planning at all? Do you dip your toe in the water and you've done a little bit of short-term planning? Are you up to the waist in the water? Focus has been on more short to mid-term planning? Or have you jumped right in and you've done extensive planning for short and long-term goals? So if you guys could just have a bit of a go at, I suppose, how much planning and reflection have you done in your business in the past? So we've got a couple of answers flowing in now. So not surprising, more so, a couple of just winging it, flying by the seat of your pants, some of, I suppose, dipping your toe in the water and done a little bit of short-term planning. No one so far seems to have done any of the...
No one's gone past the toes, huh?
No. Not surprising, though. It's really hard as a business owner to try and find time for this. And I suppose what we're going to go through today is the importance of why we do that. All right. I don't know. Anyway, I'll keep moving on. So a bit of a quote that resonated with Joe and I. So we do not learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. So in business, it's really good to take the time to reflect on experiences because it helps you make smarter decisions and improve how things happen. You need to be able to create the time to stop and think about what has happened so that you can learn from it. So reflection, why is it important? It allows businesses to assess past experiences and learn from your successes and failures. You can make then informed decisions for the future. You can foster continuous improvement. So by reflecting on what isn't going well or what hasn't worked for you in the past, it helps make things better and more successful going forward. And it enhances adaptability. So if something happens, you can pivot in your business a little bit more. So reflection not only helps these things, but it helps you identify what's gone well and see how far you've come. When you're a business owner, no one actually tells you that. And if you don't give yourself the time and space, it's really nice, I suppose, for you to just sit down and kind of go, okay, just take stock a little bit and just go, this is where we are now, this is where we've come from, and this is where I want to go.
And I think going back to that previous one, Tam, like that quote that we had there, like we all do learn. A lot of us, most of us learn from experience. We live our lives, so we learn as we go through, right from when we're born. But there's just so much more power in just stopping and thinking about what each of those things might have meant to us, or why the things occurred in the first place. Because there's so much more you can draw out of that, rather than just allowing it to happen to us. So it's that power of pause, which is, as you mentioned before, is very, very difficult when you've got 100,000 things coming at you every day.
Absolutely. So some of the things, and this is in your workbook. So the workbook that we've given you has these questions in there for you to actually write down answers to and keep a bit of a record of it. But some of the things that we like to get our clients to think about are what stands out or what are the key milestones for the last 12 months. If you could go back and change one thing about the year that's within your control, what would that be? What was your biggest highlight or thing that gave you the most satisfaction? What disappointed you about the year? What lessons did you learn from the year? What limitations did you place on yourself, if there were any? Where was most of my time and effort spent this year? Was that as I planned? If you did any planning last year. So really think about those questions and give yourself some time. So get out of the office or the workshop and actually spend some time really thinking about these and putting the time and effort in, because it bleeds out a lot of stuff. So that, and at least if you do that in your workbook, you'll be able to keep it all together. And also if you kind of do this regularly, you know, whether it's 6 monthly or yearly, you can then kind of keep referring back to, I suppose, the answers of those questions.
I think the other thing with that too, Tam, is, as you said, that expand out. Like, you know, some of those things will be really, obviously we'll pick 2 or 3 of them. There's quite a bit there. If you answer all of those questions in detail, that will take a long time. So pick 2 or 3 that stand out to you. Or if you're thinking about one and there's another thing that comes up, another question that comes up, another sort of point to reflect on, then go down that path as well. You know, go where it takes you. Don't be too structured with this. These are just more starting points for you. All right, another really useful way of, and another different structure, I suppose, of going through and reflecting on things, and a really good way to include your team in this as well, as this exercise called SSC, or Start, Stop, Continue. And this is really all about looking at it, and you can really apply this through the year. It doesn't have to be at the end of the year as a reflective thing. It could be how we're going through the year as well. So keep that in mind for use with the team. So this is about asking the question with a particular item or across the board. What should we start doing? What are we not doing that we should do, that we should start? What are we doing that we should stop? So is there anything where we're wasting time or inefficient? There's just no point in doing something that it's taking us in a different direction than where we're going to be heading, whatever that might look like. And what are the things that we should just continue doing? So they're working really well. They're developing. They're moving us in that right direction. And getting a bit of a list together of all those things, and then being able to make a decision and talk through and maybe make some changes. So it's a really good way to give you, I suppose, the team some input. So because you can go through and ask this question of them either as a group or individually about a particular thing. If you've got team members that work in different functional areas, for instance, sales or operations, manufacturing, whatever it might look like for your business, you might be able to say, okay, well, about that particular thing in our process or our business, what should we do? What should we keep doing? What should we stop? And what should we start doing? And it gives you their input as well. It gives you input from their perspective. They're obviously on the ground doing what they're doing, which is often a different role from what you're doing as a business owner. So it gives you that different perspective and a bit of an idea of what you think that might be working that actually practically doesn't, and vice versa. What do you think is maybe not that useful, but is actually very useful? And it encourages that deeper collaboration. So Tam put some words, that's probably a better way to put it. What's meh? What's sort of just average and not sort of setting the world on fire? Let's talk about that. And be specific and narrow down as much as you possibly can. If you do this too broadly across the whole business, you can imagine, saying what should we start, stop, and continue. That gets a bit, probably gets a bit too overwhelming with some of the lists that you're going to come up with. So maybe narrow it down just a little bit further than that, and then bring that list and consolidate it together.
And I think it is, as Joe said, a really powerful thing to do with your team, because quite often that helps your team members feel included, and it makes them feel valued and heard. And quite often as a business owner, we can't be across everything in our business. So those staff members, quite often what we find is their input is really valuable, and it can teach you some things that you maybe weren't aware of, or they can actually have a really good viewpoint sometimes. So it's really good for you as a business owner, not only for you to get some different ideas, but also just to help them get a little bit of, I suppose, skin in the game, because they feel like they're contributing to the bigger picture. And that's always really good from a staff member's point of view.
Definitely.
All right, so our PTP 3 circles. So I don't know if many of you that are on today have come across this before, but this is, I suppose, the basis of our business advisory arm. So life and business have 3 circles. So successful people in business have the habit of creating defined goals for each of the 3 areas, which is business and financial, personal and family and community. They work towards the completion of all of those, not just in their professional lives. Because when we go into business, although we have the best intentions and we go into business because we might be really good at what we do, or we may want a better work-life balance or whatever it is, quite often our businesses end up controlling our lives. And it's not what we intended to do, but we're working late and we're missing out on family times, and we don't get to go away on holidays sometimes because the business keeps sucking us in. So by actually stepping back and having a look at your family and community goals, your personal goals, along with your business and financial goals, our experience has shown us that when all 3 of those areas are in sync, that they act as a battery charger within our lives and reignite the spark that keeps us motivated, happy and productive. So it's so easy as a business owner to burn yourself out and just feel like you are running on a hamster wheel all the time. So I think by doing this exercise, it will help you just figure out what else you can be doing within your life to help recharge those batteries and get less burnout. So there's, again, a little section in your workbook to be able to go through that. So now that you've looked at the questions that I suppose are for you to reflect on your business, you've discussed things with your staff, and then you've looked at your whole life, bigger 3 circles, we want you to really then spend the time reflecting on all of that information that you've gathered. Now, it can be probably a little bit overwhelming because this can bleed out a lot of stuff. But I suppose what Jo and I always encourage you to do is just pick the top 3 that may have the biggest impact for you and just focus on those, because, you know, there's always so much that we can do, or there may be always so many things that we want to achieve, but we can't, if we try and focus on all of those, we're not going to get anywhere. So what we want to do is just pick the top 3 that are going to give you the most impact and just focus on those. Tick them off and achieve those, and then pick the next 3. So just break it down into much more smaller, manageable chunks.
There is a notes page there within the booklet.
Yes.
There's a whole page after those 3 things, because again, as Tam said, there's quite a lot that would come out of those different exercises. So that summary page is really just to note it down and get it onto a page. And look, you may need more than that, but getting it all down. And I think the other thing I'd suggest to those 3 circles is just don't put any limitations on it. Write down what you're looking to do. Don't sort of get caught in that. And I think we've all sort of felt this, where you think, oh, I'd like to have that, but then immediately there's a little person in the back of your brain going, okay, you can't do that because this happens, or you can't do that because this might happen, or whatever it might be. Try and turn that off if you can, or ignore it for the period of time that you're doing that. You're not trying to solve or implement these things when you do a goal setting exercise, or to write down what you're trying to achieve. You're really just trying to do exactly that. Write down what you're trying to achieve, not how you're going to do it yet. So don't try not to limit yourself, and try and turn that little voice off in the back of your head that says you can't do those things.
Definitely. So reflection, things to be aware of. Don't get too stuck in the weeds. So reflection is incredibly useful and worthwhile, but we don't want you to be too stuck in the past. Again, as I said, focus on 2 or 3 things, narrow it down to what lessons you've learned and what you want to take forward. Keep it even. So don't just focus on the losses. Make sure that you're patting yourself on the back for the wins and how far you've come as well, because it's human nature for us to be really critical of ourselves. But you also want to, no one pats us on the back as a business owner. No one's there to be our cheerleader if we aren't. So make sure that you're keeping it a bit even and you're looking at the positives and the negatives. and involve your team if you have a team and if you can. Reflection's not just useful for the business owners, but it's useful for the whole team to get perspective and engage them for the year ahead.
So another model we use that talks about, I suppose, the order of operations of when we're goal setting or looking to, I suppose, put down where we're going in the future, what we're trying to achieve. And it works across the board, whether it's in your business or personally, and probably both. As Tam said before, the 3 circles exercise, they're not mutually exclusive. So this is all about saying, okay, working out where we are now and understanding really what that looks like for us and what's working well, what's not working well. So that's the reflection part of it. So we should tick that off at that point in time. Where do we want to be in 12 months' time? Now, for some people, with goal setting, 12 months is perfect. For some people, they prefer much more shorter term horizons. It might only be 3 or 6 months. Some people prefer slightly longer term horizons. Whatever's right for you, there's no right or wrong. 12 months is a good middle ground, we sort of think, so we stick with that. It's far enough away where it's, you've got to push to get there, but it's also close enough where you can sort of see that the things you're doing today can impact at that point in time. So, and then it's a matter of, okay, once we've worked out where we're going and what that looks like, how are we going to get there? So this is the bit where, that little man I was talking about in the back, a little person in the back of your head. This is the bit where we're going to start having some arguments with that person, and potentially, and start to work through how we're going to get to the bottom of changing things or whatever it might look like if we want to be somewhere different from where we are now. So some things to think about as far as the where side of it. And again, these are just ideas. It could include more than this, but financially, some return on investment, some turnover numbers, potentially some profitability, key margins that you're trying to improve. We've got a session with our Profits Plus guys on Thursday where we're just talking about margins, and there's something that's really been squeezed over the past 12 or 18 months with prices doing what they've done across the board. So being aware of that, the focus might just be on getting that back under control for the next 12 months. What do you want to achieve with your team? Again, as Tam said, if you've got a team or you want to create a team and you're growing, what does that look like? What does your culture look like? And don't make the mistake of thinking that culture's only if you've got a team. Culture's across the board. It's you, it's the clients, it's how you operate as a business. So whether you've got just you or whether you've got 40 or 50 people, just as important. And life factors as well. So what's going to come into that you can foresee in the next 12 months, or you think it's going to happen, and where do you want to be on that front as well? You all have heard SMART goals. We've kept it a bit simpler than that. We've SMART. There's too many words to remember in that acronym. It's very useful, but PTP we've linked it back to our to just three things, which probably blends together and picks up most of the stuff within the SMART goals anyway. So P is for purposeful, connected and meaningful to you and your business. So that they need to be, they need to mean something to you in order for it to be powerful enough. And need to be time bound, so completed in a set and defined period of time. No use saying I want to do this and it'll happen when it happens. Yes, sometimes that works, but more or less you're really just going along until it occurs. We can get to spots a lot quicker or in a lot more efficient way if we put some boundaries around that. Focused on progression, getting from where you are now to where you want to be. So we're not just moving the dial, a tiny little bit. It's okay. Well, how do we maximize our movement forward? And it's important to set some clear and defined goals with these things in mind, so that you're very clear on what it looks like. It helps you prioritize things. It helps you. We're going to talk in later on in the presentation about accountability and rhythm and all that sort of stuff. It helps you plan and work through what the year might look like, and hopefully you get a sense of a year before it even starts, just by, I suppose, going through this exercise. There's a lot of things that occur throughout a year. We know that. We also know how quickly it goes past. So if we don't have those things planned out and we're not sure of what our timelines are and all those sort of things, a year can go past just like that. So that's why it's important to have these things in place. Now, a one-page plan, this is again in your workbook. There is a template there on page number, I think 5 of the workbook. And it summarises all the things that we've just spoken about around the now, where, and the how. So the now and the where. So now, that's the reflection piece. We've got a spot for 4 or 5 points up the top there to say exactly where we are right now. A spot similar for a similar amount of points at the where. So what are the key things of where you're going in the next 12 months? And then we select 3 or 4 key strategies that will take us forward, and we expand them out down under that. So if you've got that workbook, you can have a look at that. But it then works out, okay, well, of those strategies, what are the actions that we need to do as part of those? And again, there's a spot for a couple of those. We put deadlines and responsibility on those, so who's actually doing them and by when are they doing it? And then we set a rhythm to revisit and update and add new actions and revisit the overall strategy, because it may well be some of those things are done within a few weeks or a month or something, and might be, okay, well, what's our next focus, and how do we get there?
Then once you've completed your plan, what we want you to do is stress test it. So why is it important for you to stress test your plan? So it helps you identify any vulnerabilities or weaknesses. It makes sure that it's going to be resilient in the face of unexpected change. It makes you more prepared for various different scenarios and helps you achieve success more in the long term. So the way that you would stress test your plan, say for instance, you want to go, at the moment you have a certain turnover, you want to increase that. I'm just going to give you an example for that. You would ask what could go wrong with your plan. And you might have different, things like, oh, my marketing might not work, or, our product is getting harder to sell to consumers because of the price point or something like that. So if you think of all of those things that could go wrong, then you've got to think about, well, what can we do about it? So it actually helps put your mind in just a different strategic thinking space that allows you to be able to think about all of the things that could go wrong in the next 12, 18 months and actually already, start thinking about what you could do to be proactive with what could go wrong. So it brings all of that to the forefront for you with those 2 simple questions. So what could go wrong with our plan and what could we do about it?
I think alternatively too there, Tam, like the questions we've got on our stress testing page in the workbook are, what could happen and what would we do if that did happen? Now, the one we jump to quite often is what could go wrong, because that's very useful thinking. But the other thing too is, like, what happens if something goes really right? What happens if you're having a real win there? What would you do? If you blew it out of the water, and blew your budget out in 3 months instead of 12, and you achieved your turnover, where would you go next? What would be the next thing? So
what's that trigger point to maybe put a new staff member on, or expand this or something like that? Absolutely. Got to think of the positives as well.
Yep.
Definitely. All right. So then we go into roles and rhythms. So what is your role within the business, and what are the roles of the key people in your business if you've got staff? Do you spend your time where you intend to, or do you get sucked back into the day-to-day? What are your top 2 or 3 non-negotiables? So non-negotiables should be things that you focus on, that should be more working on the business rather than just getting sucked back into the crazy day-to-day. What does a week or month need to look like for your business in order for you to progress? And what does a week, month, or year need to look like in order to achieve your desired outcomes? So do you need something like a day in the office? Do you need a day out of the shop to be able to focus on some of these things, or off the tools or something like that? What's going to be the one thing that you change that's going to give you the best chance of achieving that plan of yours? So I suppose, when you define what your role is and the roles of the key people in your business, this helps, I suppose, your staff support you the best that they can. And it also helps by defining their roles, it helps them step up and elevate them as well. So I suppose this is all of the things that I suppose are going to set you up for the best chance of success going forward. All right, so bit of a poll here. What takes you out of your ideal role in your business? So where you know you should be or where you are now, what actually takes you away from that at the moment? So we've got a few questions, a few different options there. So is it the lack of capability or capacity within your team? Are you just caught in the doing? Are you overcommitted? Have you got a lack of boundary setting? Or are you a bit of a perfectionist? So if you could just have a bit of a look at choosing one of those.
Give you 20 seconds or so, guys. If everyone can answer in some capacity, that'd be great. Just give us a bit of an idea. We've got most people answering, but if we can get everyone just selecting an option, because I'm sure it applies to all of us. I know it certainly applies to me. Oh, here we go. We're getting a few more. Excellent. Good bit of a spread. A few more people yet to answer. 5 more seconds.
I like that. Em's put all of the above. I think that's in relation to the poll questions.
Yes. Very true, Em. Yep. Excellent. All right. I think we've got a good spread. Surprising that no one's caught in the doing. Which is good, which is fantastic. But we've got at least one answer and a couple for a couple of the options there. So thanks to those, and like thanks for answering that. And for all of those options, like there's others as well. Obviously, we've got to limit the amount of options we can provide, but there are many others, and as Em rightly pointed out, it can be a combination of all of them and other things as well. We certainly know we're very busy people, and it is very difficult to stick to task, and that 100,000 things coming at us day to day. That doesn't change if we've got team members. In fact, it can be more things coming at us. As a sole trader, you sort of think, how good would it be to have more people to help me out with some of this stuff? Well, at times it can actually add more to your plate. So, in fact, most of the time, it can add more to your plate. So, that's great. And as Tam said before, that's again within the workbook. There's a spot to fill that in. We've got a spot for 4 people within your business as well, including you. You're the top. There's one there at the very top for you as the main person, because if you don't know what your role is within your business, then you're going to be pretty stuck to, I suppose, to get that message out to the team and help lead the team in a way that's going to be effective. So understanding what your key tasks are, as Tam said before, some of those things might be that the quad 2, the not important, not urgent sort of tasks, that working on your business stuff. But some of it might be operational as well. Mm-hmm. They will be, in fact, almost certainly that most business owners will have some role within the operations of their business directly. So, just being mindful of that, because it's those things. I'm sure we've all experienced that. You think, I know I should be doing this because it's important, and I need to be doing it in order to keep the invoices going out or to get a job done or whatever it might look like. But you've got these other things that are at the time that appear equally important. So this is about, none of this is set in stone. It's all about, it can all be changed or can be adjusted on the way through, but it's really just going in with the intention that these are the key things I need to focus on. These are the key people that my senior managers, or the key things that my senior managers need to focus on as well. And we'll hold each other accountable to doing that. All right. So accountability is the glue that ties commitment to the result. I think that's it. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. And we're big on accountability and delivering, I suppose, that assistance that comes with it, and helping people. Just remind, either at minimum it's a reminder. And for a lot of people, it's a case of, okay, well, if I've got a phone call with Joe or Tam, or I know that we're going to be held accountable, well, it's going to at least make me take some action or move in some way towards that, towards completing that thing, and hopefully that thing is moving you towards where you want to be. So we've got 3 questions here. Again, we'd encourage, there's a spot within your workbook to fill this in as to what you would like this to look like. But it's really designing what your accountability looks like. People will be comfortable, and this is going to work best for you if you're comfortable to a degree. It's going to somewhat take you out of your comfort zone, but you've got to be able to commit to it and stick to it. Otherwise, there's no use in doing it. So there's 3 questions here. Who are you going to be accountable to? So that might be your business partner, might be a senior staff member, it might be your husband, wife, partner, it might be us. It could be anyone. But whoever that person is has got to be able to ask you these questions. You've got to feel comfortable doing that, and you've got to feel comfortable with them doing that and talking to them about it. A when. So again, there's a bit of stuff about being purposeful and time bound here. But when are you going to talk to these people? How regularly do you need to talk to them? Is it going to be every week? Is it going to be every month? Is it going to be quarterly? My suggestion would be, for most people, at minimum a quarterly thing. Anything beyond that is starting to get into you're going to forget territory. And to be honest, I think monthly probably works better as far as this sort of stuff. We know how quickly a month goes past, and it's a really great reminder to, I suppose, keep that rhythm going. We spoke about a rhythm before. So, and then how do you want to be held accountable? What format will the discussion happen in? Do you want to be in person? Do you want it to happen at work? Do you want it to happen at home? I've got clients that, spouses that work in businesses together, that this sort of stuff and accountability discussions only happen at the office. We're having that. We don't get into this sort of stuff at home. We've got others that prefer to have that sort of discussion at home and away from the business as well. So again, this is about designing it to fit with what is right for you. There's no right or wrong answer with this stuff. We don't want it to be easy though, as I said before. It's got to be comfortable enough that you're going to do it without being easy. It's got to take you out of that comfort zone. Accountability, I think, when it's done well, should be a little bit uncomfortable if you haven't done what you said you were going to do. Because that's the whole purpose of it, is it drives you to actually do those things. All right, we're flying through this, Tam.
Yeah, it's great. We're going to be able to have an early mark.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so how can we help? So obviously, Joe and I have put together this workbook that you can download, which has the reflection pieces, the goals and the planning going forward. How are you then going to get there? And how are you then going to make yourself accountable? So that stepping through each page of the workbook will be, I suppose, a really good way to set that plan and keep yourself accountable. If then you feel like you need some more help or you want to share that with someone, so Joe and I or the team at PTP can help with some strategy sessions. So these are tailored one-day sessions with documented outcomes and actions. You could join our PTP BizIQ group, which if you may have heard of our Growth Hub group, it's just different name going into 2024. So they're quarterly group sessions to develop greater strategic understanding of your business with like-minded peers. You could become part of the PTP Profits Plus group, which is more of the financial basics and how to build an awesome base to allow you to be that chief financial officer of your own business and getting more in tune, I suppose, with those financial goals. Or if you wanted more of that accountability partner, we could do some coaching with you, which is a one-on-one time, monthly, quarterly, weekly. There's lots of different options. And we can help encourage you, workshop through things, break down barriers, and help you achieve those goals. So is there any questions that anyone has? I'll have a bit of a look. Feel free to ask questions because, as Joe said, we have been flying through today. It's always a bit hard to tell exactly how long these things are going to take. We try to absolutely make sure we're only going to ever be an hour. But you will get a copy of the slides and a copy of the workbook on email afterwards anyway.
We have got a couple. We did have a couple of questions prior to the session today. So if we haven't got any, by all means, continue to put questions in or comments in the chat section if you'd like to do that. But we have got 4 or 5 questions here that we will run through as well that were put to us prior to the session. So we'll keep an eye out in the chat for any questions that come through. But we might start off with the first of these questions. Is Tam, how do I get my team involved in planning and reflection?
I think that I would, I suppose, start off with I like to do a bit more of like an informal staff meeting. So have maybe a breakfast together and ask those questions. And I suppose just, start off with the SSC. Is it SSC? Yeah.
Yep.
The stop, start, continue. Start off with that, or start off with something as simple as what's working well and what's not working well. So I would be, I suppose, involving them in that. Have maybe a whiteboard that you can write stuff down on, or someone can come up and do that. Make it informal. People can tend to, in formal settings, not want to give answers or speak their mind. So I tend to find, just sitting around as a group, having a chat, and making it that little bit more informal gets more results. And also maybe even getting them to do a bit of pre-work before the meeting. So getting them to actually think about things beforehand, because we all know what it's like when we're put on the spot. It's really difficult to think of things sometimes. So at least if you give them the questions beforehand, whether it's, what do we stop, what do we start, what do we continue, or what's working well, what's not working well, they can actually think about that beforehand and really give you some valuable information when you're going through that process.
Awesome. And Emily, we just answered your question with that first one, so that's great.
Oh, great.
I think I would add to that. I would agree with everything you said, Tam. I think people are a bit reluctant, I find, at times to involve their team. They're sort of a bit concerned about what might come out. They're a bit private, or that necessarily thinking it's not my team's problem, that's my problem. They sort of put it all on their shoulders, and understandable, but the amount of stuff that you get from your team, and look, some people will be more open than others. There's no doubt about that. And you'll have some conversations with people or with your group of people, and there'll always be people that are more forthcoming with feedback or with information. But even those that aren't still get to go through and hear that process. They still get to understand that they've got the opportunity to be heard. It might just take a few times of doing that sort of thing for them to feel comfortable opening up. Feel comfortable. Or share with what you feel. Share the amount of information that you feel comfortable with. You don't have to go into huge amounts of detail or any financial information if you don't want to go that far. Again, I'm a big one for sharing as much as you are comfortable with it. A fair bit, to be honest. I just think it just really adds context for the people that work with you and the team you're working in. So I think that the number one thing is just start that process. As Tam said, keep it as informal as you like, and just reiterate it. Like if it's not working, try it a different way.
Absolutely. Joe, one of the questions was, what's the best way to do the SSC exercise?
Yeah, I think we covered off this a little bit in the first part of when we were going through this, that section of the presentation, is really just to nail down on a particular area. Because it can get a bit overwhelming if you do the whole business. So it may well be that if you've got a operations manager or a sales person or a marketing team or whatever your business looks like, that you just hone in on that particular thing. One of the things that we quite often do with clients is a workflow exercise. I know Tam's been doing quite a few of these lately. It's the same thing as let's step through and look at what is actually happening right now. And then what's working, let's rate that, and what's working really well and what's not working at all. I mean, how do we shift that around? You can do that with any part of your process, any process within your business at all, any particular message that you're putting out to customers, whatever it looks like. But just be a little bit specific with. I would suggest to be a little bit specific with what you're asking that question about, as opposed to just generally going to someone and saying, well, in our business, what can we start, what can we stop, and what should we keep going with? Because the mind boggles.
Absolutely. And I think if you don't have different departments, if you're a smaller business that's, just maybe 3 or 4 staff members, just ask the question about what could we do about production? What would we start doing? What could we stop doing? What would we continue doing in our production process or our customer service? So just by narrowing down that scope, even if you don't have different departments, because I know that can be a bit like, but we don't have a marketing department because I'm the business owner and I have the marketing hat on and I have the finance hat on and I have the production hat and all of that. So I suppose when you're speaking to your staff or when you're considering it, just try and ask yourself specifically about maybe, as Joe said, this particular part in the process.
All right, another one here. What happens if we are really overwhelmed or we just don't have time for this stuff? And again, I think this is a pretty common question.
Yeah.
We touched on this a little bit. So we just don't have time for reflection or to stop and plan. We've just got to keep powering through. What would you suggest?
One, I would say that if you don't make the time, if you don't make a change, then nothing's going to change. So I think you have to make yourself have the time, and whether that is you do it overnight because you're just too busy during the day, or you do it on a Sunday, or you have a half a day or something like that. So I think you need to make the time because it's really important for you to do that, because nothing will change in your business or your life without you actually investing that time. So that's, I suppose, the first part is if we don't have time, we still need to make the time somehow. And we can always find pockets of little pockets of time to be able to do that. If you're feeling overwhelmed, I think that is a really common thing when we look at this, that as I said earlier, it might bleed out a lot of stuff. And I think that the best way to get around that is by just narrowing it down and only focusing on that 2 to 3 things. Don't try and do it all. It's no different to, just business and life. You can't try and do it all. We've just got to try and focus on a few different things at a time. And then that will help with that overwhelm. Do this document, do the plan. You may have 5 or 6 things. Choose 2 or 3, then put it aside and just write those up. Put them on the board so you can focus on them. Put them up on your wall or, something like that. Just focus on those 3 things and then come back to the drawing board and then focus on the next 2 to 3 things and just break it down into little steps. You got anything you'd add there, Joe?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the other thing, that whole Paretoing thing and looking at that 80-20 rule and saying, well, what gives us the most bang for our buck here, and where do we spend that time? Because we do only have so much time and energy in order to do these things. So I think the other thing to keep in mind is if you're in a position where you're constantly, completely zapped of time, energy, you're just chasing your tail all the time, that you think you're going to get to the end of that without going through a planning process or working through what's important. I think to be blunt, I think you're kidding yourself, because I think it's a case of the tail's wagging the dog at that point in time. You said before, Tam, your business can take over your life, and you're in a position where you feel like you've got to do all these things in order to get to the next step. Taking time to reflect and to plan, when it's done really well, might take most half a day to a day. We know that being able to put that time aside and being able to commit to that, and then I suppose be able to stick to that and be accountable to it, will make an enormous difference. And we know that because we see it with business owners all the time we work with. So we've got people in situations like this. We work with clients in situations where they feel like they cannot get out from under where they're at now. And the number one step is creating that time and space. Now, it doesn't need to be half your week. It doesn't need to be days and days of time every week. It might just be one time, and then we create a rhythm where we just keep that going. So again, I would encourage you, if you feel like you absolutely don't have time and there's no way forward, or there's no time in the future that you will have time, that's precisely telling you why you should actually make the time right now. So yeah, I agree with that. And the other one too is it's in line with picking those 2 or 3 things. Is if you can't do something, this is something that's come from from Mindshot, which is a group that Tam and I are in around this stuff, and it talks about halving the thing. So if you can't do something, halve it. So do half the amount of whatever that is going to be to make it a lot simpler. If you can't do that, halve it again until you get it to a point where you just do something for 5 minutes, and you make a step in the right direction. If you can't do something that feels like it's going to take you forever, just keep making it simpler and simpler until such time as you're almost silly not to do it. And again, it just creates that momentum, and momentum is the key to all of this stuff.
Absolutely. All right, Joe, last question. What if we don't know where to start?
Again, I think the starting point with any of this stuff is coming back and making the time to sit down and do it. So before you do anything at all, we really need to find a way in your mind to go, okay, well, I'm going to put aside a couple of hours to sit down and have a think about this stuff. Now, our workbook that we put together should really give you a really good, solid starting point for getting things out of your head and onto a bit of paper. And then you're at a point in time where you're at a point where you can go through and pick those things. They should stand out to you on the page, or if they don't, just reach out and we'll talk through those things. But the exercise that we put in there will hopefully point out to you the things to really focus on that are important to you, and you're then in a position where you can go, okay, well, how are we going to do this now? And again, you might be able to work through the strategies for how to do that and who's going to do it and set all those things up, or you may want to reach out and have a chat about some of those things, and we're happy to help with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Emily's just popped in here. The accountability bit feels like it will be the biggest challenge. Workload seems to always take priority at times. And you're not the only one, Em, at all. This is, I suppose, that's why we say, because it's all good to do your reflection and your planning and all of that, but the accountability is the bit that ties it all together, because you can do all of the planning in the world, but then if you don't execute it, then it's, you're not going to get to where you want to be. So I think there's lots of different things around that accountability that you can do. You can, I suppose, talk with your business partner or your staff and kind of figure out how are you going to keep yourselves accountable. Is it that you need someone external to come in and help you guys with that you have to kind of report to each month, because they know where you're trying to get to? Is it that you guys need to set aside a half a day or an hour at least a month, and you don't go into work, you go and you go to a cafe, or you go to home, or you go somewhere else to just talk about these things and just get back on track? I think you'll find that if you just make that time, it will make a massive difference for you.
I think also with that, Emily, is that workload seems to always take priority at times, is because it should probably. It is that most of the time in an operating business, whatever business you're in, that you need to do the business. We don't go to business to strategize. People don't pay you to strategize. They pay us to strategize sometimes, but they don't pay you to strategize in your own business. They pay you to sell them things, to build them things, to whatever you do for them. So you need to do those things. That needs to be the center of the business universe. That process, and that's the rhythm. That's the operating rhythm we talk about. Is okay. That needs to tick through, but it shouldn't take up every hour of every day of every week. There should be time put aside, and as Tam said, it doesn't need to be a lot of time to spend in that second quadrant, that not important, not urgent, important but not urgent stuff. That is really enabling you to move the dial and go to that next level. Because otherwise, you may be very happy with where you are now with the operations and the profitability and all that sort of stuff. If you want to take it to that next level, there will be some things that need to happen outside of operations in order to take it to that next level.
I like Brian's comment here. 2024 is a leap year. Is that the universe giving us an extra day for planning in order to have a fantastic year?
I think so.
I think that's a great idea, Tomo. So there you go. In February, do your planning with that extra day.
thinking outside the box, Brian, as usual. That's very
Yeah.
good. One more day, and yeah, and it is. I mentioned before about momentum. All the stuff is all about momentum. If you feel like you're going in the right direction and you're getting some runs on the board and getting some wins, you're much more likely to make the time. Now, the reason a lot of us don't make that time is because we feel like we're not getting a win from it. Now, if you feel all of a sudden that you are getting a win, and it's that catch-22 of you've got to invest enough time and effort into it in order to generate the win, but also being mindful that, and so the downside of that is if you do it tokenistically or you don't invest that time, you're going to reinforce your same thinking around that. I've done some planning, I didn't get anywhere, this is a waste of time. It needs to be done really well, and it does need to be done. And when it is done really well, it makes a massive difference. And when you start to feel those wins, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to do more hours of it, but it might just mean you get sharper at it and better, or you might just open your mind up completely to what you can achieve. And hopefully for all of us, 2024 gives us that opportunity that we think big and we think aspirationally rather than just doing what we've always done. Even if it's just that taking us that 1 or 2% further, that'll feel really satisfying, I'm sure, at the end of the year. So really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. As we said at the start, enjoy the run into Christmas. Hopefully you're getting a nice break over that Christmas New Year period, and you've got that time to sit down and just take a breath and reflect, and all the best for a really fantastic year ahead with 2024. Tam, have you got anything else you want to say?
No, all good. Hope you all have a Merry Christmas, and thanks for joining us this year, and we look forward to seeing you all in 2024.
Awesome.
See you later.